Minash-shaytanir-rajim. Bismillahir-rahmanir-rahim. I am Professor Dr. Zuhra Nazir Kiani from the Physics Department of Lahore College for Women, University Lahore. I will teach you MS Physics course Semiconductor Electronic Devices. This is the first lesson which we will learn from this coursework. Dear students, you know that when this coronavirus trauma started, we were at the sixth chapter, that is field effect transistor. So initially I have completed all my leftover chapters, and now I will again start revision of the course which was taught before this corona trauma. So this should be initial lecture, but as it was given face to face on that time, so it is recorded at later time. What we will study in this lecture, initially we will just do the revision of the already studied crystal lattices which you have studied in detail in your solid state um, physics course in BS, and I think you study that course in 2 semesters. Then we will discuss the bulk crystal growth, and in that first of all we will study that what will be the starting material to grow the bulk crystal. Then we will see that how that starting material can be converted into single crystal ingot. After that, we will move to the formation of wafer, and lastly we will discuss the doping which can be done in certain semiconductor materials. So these are the bravest letters, seven bravest letters, which you call crystal systems. That is triclinic, monoclinic, orthorhombic, trigonal, tetragonal, hexagonal, and cubic. Um, Now basically your crystal, there are several crystal system, and the bravest lattices are primitive, base centered, body centered, face centered. Um, and it depends on, as you can see in triclinic, um, side A is not equal to B is not equal to C, that three sides are not equal, not three angle are equal. In monoclinic the case is somewhat different, sides are not equal, but two angle alpha and gamma are equal to 90 degree, while beta is not 90 degree. Then comes orthorhombic, in which three sides are not equal, but all the three angles are 90 degree. Then come the trigonal, in which all sides are equal, but two angles are equal to 90 degree, and one angle is not equal to 90 degree. Then come your tetragonal, in which two sides are equal, but all the three angles are equal. Then come the hexagonal, in which uh, two sides are equal, two angles are equal to 90 degree, and two angles are equal to 60 degree. And then come your cubic crystal, in which three sides are equal and three angles are equal to 90 degree, and you have discussed this all in detail in your solid state course. Now here there is 14 bravest lattices are given, 7 crystal system and 14 bravest lattices. Cubic, we have a primitive, body centered, face centered, tetragonal, primitive, body centered, hexagonal, just primitive, orthorhombic, primitive, body centered, face centered, basis face centered, monoclinic, primitive, basis face centered, trigonal is primitive, triclinic is primitive. And here is the most known structure, that is diamond structure. Girls, I know that diamond is very important in every girl life. Girls like to wear that, but you know that coal is also a shape of diamond, because these are the carbon, and they have got the sp3 hybridization. So here is the dimer lattice unit cell showing the 4 nearest neighbor. Here you can see that here you have got 4 nearest neighbor for everyone. Then come the crystal structure of sodium chloride, which is actually two FCC structures which are combined together, and red is sodium and green is chlorine. Then we move to the bulk crystal growth. In bulk crystal growth uh, is important for the progress of solid state devices, and the progress of solid state device technology started with the invention of transistor in 1948, which has not only dependent on the development of device concept but also on the improvement of materials. For example, the fact the integrated circuit can be made today is the result of considerable breakthrough in the growth of pure single crystal silicon in the early and mid 1950s. The requirements on the growing of device grade semiconductor crystals are more stringent than those for any other material. Not only must semiconductor be available large single crystal, but also the purity must be controlled within extremely close limits. For example, silicon crystal now being used in devices are grown with concentration of most impurities of less than 1 part in 10 billion. Such purities require careful handling and treatment of material at each step of the manufacturing process. Then come the discussion of the starting material. You know that basically you take a raw silicon crystal, that is silicon dioxide, and we react that silicon oxide with carbon in the form of coke in a furnace at a very high temperature, which is equal to 18 degrees C, to reduce silicon dioxide according to following reaction. Here you can see that silicon dioxide react with the carbon, and what it will produce? It will produce silicon with the emission of carbon monoxide. But this form the metallurgical grade silicon, which has impurities such as iron, aluminium and heavy metals at levels of several hundred to several thousand parts per million. So 1 part million of silicon corresponds to an impurity level of 5 into 10 raised by 16 per centimeter cube, while metallurgical grade silicon is clean enough for metallurgical applications such as using silicon to make stainless steel. It is not pure enough for electronic application. It is also not single crystal. So we have to refine it more. So the metallurgical grade silicon is refined to further to yield semiconductor grade electronic grade silicon, in which level of impurities are reduced to parts per billion. That is 1 part per billion is equal to 5 into 10 to the 13 per centimeter cube. This involves reacting the metallurgical grade silicon with dry HCl according to the following reaction in form of trichlorosilane, which is liquid with a boiling point of 32 degrees C. Along with the trichlorosilane, chlorides of impurities such as iron chloride are formed, with fortunately having boiling points that are different from the trichlorosilane. This allows a technique called fractional distillation to be used, in which we heat up the mixture of silicon hydrochloride and the impurity chlorides and condense the vapors in different distillation towers held at appropriate temperature. We can therefore separate pure trichlorosilane from the impurities. And then here, as this reaction is shown, this trichlorosilane is reacted with hydrogen to form the electronic grade silicon with the emission of hydrochloric acid, which may be emitted in form of gas. Now you can use this silicon, which is now produced in the last step. You can use it in your device fabrications. Now here you can see that how your molten silicon intake is taken in crucible. A seed or substrate is grown, just put inside this molten silicon and pull out at certain speed, and during this emission process some silicon will be just stick with this seed crystal, and so you will get the silicon deposited on this seed. So now what we will go, how we will grow this single crystal, this starting material, that is electronic grade silicon, to single crystal ingot. This is generally done today by a process commonly called the Zucharski method. In order to grow single crystal material, it is necessary to have a seed crystal which can provide a template for growth. We melt the electronic grade silicon in a quartz lined graphite crucible by resistively heating it to the melting point of silicon 1412 degrees C. A seed crystal is lowered into the molten material and then raised slowly, allowing the crystal to grow onto the seed. Generally, the crystal is rotated slowly as it grows to provide slight stirring of the melt and to average out any temperature variation that would cause inhomogeneous solidification. This technique is widely used in growing silicon, germanium, and some of the compound semiconductors. Now, in pulling compounds such as gallium arsenide from melt, it is necessary to prevent volatile element, for example arsenic, from vaporizing. In one method, a layer of boron oxide, which is dense and viscous, when molten, floats on the surface of molten gallium arsenide to prevent arsenic evaporation. This growth method is called the liquid encapsulated Chudovsky growth. In this crystal growth, the shape of the ingot is determined by the combination of tendency of the cross section to assume a polygon shape due to crystal structure and influence of the surface tension, which encourages a circular cross section. The crystal facets are noticeable in the initial growth near the seed crystal. However, the cross section of large ingot is almost circular. In the fabrication of the silicon integrated circuit, it is economical to use very large silicon wafer so that many IC chips can be made simultaneously. As a result, a considerable research and development have gone into methods for growing very large silicon crystals. For example, in this figure, here you can see, like here, you can see a 12-inch diameter silicon ingot, which is 1.5 meter long and its weight is 275 kg. And here you can see a technician holding a 300 nanometer wafer. Now, next step is to convert your this silicon ingot, which is grown on the seed crystal, to wafer. So after the single crystal ingot is grown, it is then mechanically processed to manufacture wafers. The first step involves mechanically grinding more or less cylindrical ingot into a perfect cylinder with a precisely controlled diameter. This is important because in motor integrated circuit fabrication facility, that is many processing tool and wafer handling robots require tight tolerance on the size of wafer. Using X-ray crystallography, crystal planes in the ingot are identified. Most of the silicon ingots are grown along 110 direction. For such ingots, a small notch is grown on one side of cylinder to delineate at 110 face of the crystal. This is useful because for 100 silicon wafer, the 110 cleavage planes are orthogonal to each other. This then allows the individual integrated chips to be made oriented along 110 planes so that when the chips are sawed apart, there is a less chance of spurious cleavage of crystal, which could cause good chips to be lost. Now here you can see the steps involved in the manufacturing of silicon wafers. Here you have got crystal growth, then you have just seed crystal on which silicon is grown, then there is a wafer is sawed, then there is edge shaping, and so you are moving to different steps and until you reach to the last wafer which was required for you. So when silicon cylinder is sawed into individual wafers about 775 micrometer thick by using a diamond tipped inner hole blade saw or a wire saw, the resulting wafers are mechanically lapped and ground on both sides to achieve a flat surface and to remove the mechanical damage due to sawing. Such damage would have a determinant effect on device. The flatness of wafer is critical from the point of view of depth of focus or how sharp an image can be focused on the wafer surface during photolithography. The silicon wafers are then rounded along the edges to minimize the likelihood of chipping the wafers during processing. Finally, the wafers undergo chemical mechanical polishing using a slurry of very fine silica particles in a basic sodium hydroxide solution to give the front surface of the wafer a mirror-like finish. The wafers are now ready for integrated circuit fabrication. The economic value added in this process is impressive. From sand costing pennies, we can obtain silicon wafers costing a few $100s, on which we can make 100 of microprocessors, for example, each costing several $100. So this is the way how wafer is manufactured from the ingot. That is, initially you have got a raw silica from which you have obtained metallurgical grade silicon, which you convert to in the electrically graded silicon, and then you converting it into ingot, and then ingot was just salt in form of wafers. And the next step is the doping. You know that when there is molten electronic grade silicon in which you have just dipped the seed crystal, there are many impurities, but you can also include some impurities in intentionally inside the silicon melt, so that you can add in silicon any n-type impurities, um, or any p-type impurities if you want n-type material or p-type materials. At the solidifying interface between the melt and solid, there will be a certain distribution of impurity between two phases. An important quantity that identifies this property is called the distribution coefficient Kd, which is a ratio of the concentration of the impurity in the solid to concentration in the liquid at equilibrium. The distribution coefficient is a function of material, the impurity, the temperature of the solid liquid interface, and the growth rate. For an impurity with a distribution coefficient of 1/2, the relative concentration of impurity in the molten liquid to that in the refreezing solid is 2 to 1. Thus, the concentration of impurities in that portion of material that solidify first is the 1/2 of the original concentration C0. The distribution coefficient is thus important during growth from melt. This can be illustrated by an example involving Zhu-Cholesky growth. So this factor is very much important. Now students, I will expect from you that in your BG's treatment book an example 1.4 is given. You will take it as an assignment and please solve this assignment and just post it in the Google class. Thanks, girl. I hope that this initial lecture you understood it. As we move forward, you will develop interest in this field as well, which is very important because you know that silicon technology is growing fast and fast, and it has taken rule of all the electronic and optoelectronic industries. Thanks for your concentration.